The glow of the phone screen illuminated 14-year-old Alex's face in the quiet of his bedroom. On the screen, a video played on a loop, a classmate, surrounded by laughing friends, gasping for air after eating a single, menacingly dark tortilla chip. The caption was simple, #OneChipChallenge. Can you handle it? Below, the metrics ticked upward, hundreds of likes, dozens of comments praising his bravery. For Alex, watching from the solitude of his room, the message was clear. This was the price of admission. This was a ticket to relevance. He had seen the chips for sale at a local convenience store. The next day, with his own phone set to record, he unwrapped the foil package. The immediate, searing pain was unlike anything he had ever felt. He doubled over, struggling to breathe, his vision blurring. The phone fell, still recording, as he collapsed. The likes he so desperately craved would never be counted. His parents, arriving home later, would find him unresponsive, their shock and grief compounded by the incomprehensible discovery of the video on his phone, a digital testament to a risk he didn't understand for a reward that was never real. Alex's story, a composite of all too real tragedies, is not an isolated incident. It is a symptom of a deeply troubling and pervasive modern phenomenon. From the blackout challenge, which has claimed the lives of children by encouraging self-asphyxiation, to the Benadryl challenge, which led to fatal overdoses, a generation of young people is engaging in a high-stakes game of digital brinkmanship. They are risking severe injury, permanent disability, criminal charges, and even their lives for a fleeting moment of online attention, a transient currency known as clout. This raises a profound and urgent question. Why are today's adolescents, more than any generation before them, risking everything for likes? This book argues that these dangerous viral challenges are the predictable and tragic consequence of a perfect storm. They represent the collision of three powerful forces: the unique and profound vulnerabilities of the adolescent brain as it undergoes its most critical phase of development, the timeless and fundamental psychological drivers of social behavior that compel humans to seek acceptance, recognition, and belonging, and, most critically, the architectural and economic imperatives of social media platforms. These digital arenas are not neutral spaces. They are meticulously engineered environments, governed by algorithms designed with a single, overriding objective: to maximize user engagement at any cost. The result is a system that can inadvertently, yet predictably, amplify the most sensational, shocking, and dangerous content, serving it directly to its most vulnerable audience. To fully understand this crisis, we must deconstruct its constituent parts. This report will embark on a comprehensive investigation, beginning with the psychological bedrock of participation. Chapter 1, The Psychology of the Chase, will explore the powerful forces of social proof, the fear of missing out, FOMO, the desire for recognition, and the thrill of competition that make these challenges so irresistible. Chapter 2, The Influence Brain, will shift from psychology to neurobiology, presenting stark evidence from fMRI studies that reveal how social media use is not just exploiting the teenage brain but actively altering its developmental trajectory, making it more impulsive and hypersensitive to social feedback. From there, we will turn our attention to the technology itself. Chapter 3, The Algorithmic Amplifier, will demystify the black box of social media algorithms, explaining how their core function of maximizing engagement creates a structural bias that favors the spread of harmful content. Chapter 4, From Pranks to Peril, will provide crucial historical context, tracing the evolution of youth mischief from localized pranks to monetized, global, and often life-threatening online spectacles, analyzing how the profit motive has created a market for escalating cruelty. To ground this analysis in reality, Chapter 5, A Global Gallery of Challenges, will present a sobering typology of challenges and offer detailed case studies from around the world, illustrating the devastating real-world consequences. This leads into Chapter 6, The Fallout, which will navigate the complex legal and ethical landscape, from the wave of lawsuits being filed against tech giants to the ongoing debate over platform liability and the criminal prosecution of young participants. Finally, having dissected the problem, the report will turn toward solutions. Chapter 7, The Watchers, will critically evaluate the effectiveness of platform policies and parental responses, while Chapter 8, Forging a Safer Path Forward, will outline a multi-layered framework of evidence-based interventions. This includes clinical therapies, the crucial role of digital literacy education, and innovative approaches like restorative justice to heal online harm. The conclusion will synthesize these findings, issuing a call to action for a fundamental rethinking of how we design and regulate the digital world for our children. This is not a story about bad kids or bad parents. It is a story about a system of misaligned incentives where the relentless pursuit of engagement has dangerously overshadowed the duty of care. Chapter 1. The Psychology of the Chase. Why they participate. The decision to swallow a spoonful of cinnamon, to walk blindfolded into traffic, or to choke oneself into unconsciousness for a 15-second video is, on its face, profoundly irrational. Yet, for millions of adolescents, the logic behind participating in a viral social media challenge is not only coherent but compelling. This compulsion is not born of a single motive but is woven from a complex tapestry of deep-seated psychological needs and social dynamics, supercharged by the unique environment of digital platforms. To understand why kids risk everything, one must first dissect the powerful psychological drivers that make participation feel not like a choice, but a necessity. These drivers, social proof, fear of missing out, the quest for recognition, and the allure of entertainment, combine to create a potent cocktail of influence that is particularly intoxicating to the adolescent mind. 1.1 The Power of the Crowd, Social Proof and the Contagion Effect. One of the most fundamental forces driving participation in viral challenges is the principle of social proof. This psychological phenomenon describes our tendency to look to the actions of others to determine the correct behavior in a given situation. When a young person sees a large number of their peers, or even strangers, participating in a challenge, their brain interprets this mass action as a signal of value and social correctness. The challenge is perceived as popular, and therefore, worthwhile. This creates a powerful, herd mentality that lowers inhibitions and encourages others to join in, regardless of the inherent risks. In the digital realm, metrics like view counts, likes, and shares serve as a highly visible and quantifiable form of social proof, making a trend's popularity appear both overwhelming and undeniable. This principle is the engine behind the contagion effect, the mechanism by which behaviors, attitudes, and ideas spread rapidly from person to person through a network. Social media platforms are the perfect incubators for this effect. The way content creators depict these challenges, often with high energy, humor, and an absence of negative consequences, acts as a key accelerant, encouraging others to replicate the behavior. Research from Clemson University analyzing motivations for challenge participation found this to be a primary factor. For riskier challenges, such as the infamous Cinnamon Challenge, the motivation was often not direct encouragement from a friend but a desire to feel included in a group that had already participated. One student captured this sentiment perfectly. "I think I did it because everyone I was going to school with did it at the time. And I figured there has to be something about it if everyone was doing it." This statement is a textbook example of social proof in action. The sheer volume of participation created an irresistible assumption of value. The power of social proof and contagion reveals a critical inversion of risk calculation in the digital age. In many pre-digital social contexts, taking a significant physical risk would lead to social ostracization or concern, acting as a natural deterrent. A friend who suggested jumping off a roof would likely be met with resistance from the group. In the world of viral challenges, however, this dynamic is flipped on its head. The challenge itself creates a temporary, highly visible in-group. The primary social risk is not participating and therefore being excluded from this shared cultural moment. Thus, taking a physical risk becomes the primary method to avoid a social risk, the pain of being ignored, irrelevant, or left out. 1.2 The fear of missing out, FOMO, and the need to belong. Intimately linked to social proof is the powerful emotional driver known as the fear of missing out, FOMO. When an adolescent's feed is flooded with videos of friends, classmates, and admired influencers all taking part in the same challenge, it can trigger intense anxiety about being excluded from a shared experience. FOMO is more than just disappointment. It is a deep-seated fear of social obsolescence. In the fast-moving current of online culture, not participating is akin to being invisible. This fear is a potent motivator, compelling young people to join in and contribute their own version of the challenge simply to remain part of the conversation. This drive is rooted in one of the most fundamental needs of adolescence, the need for community and belonging. Viral challenges, for all their potential harm, are exceptionally effective at creating a sense of shared experience and camaraderie on a massive scale. They bring people together around a common activity, fostering a feeling of connection that can be especially powerful for young people who may feel isolated or are actively seeking to bond with others over shared interests or causes. Research on the motivations of pre-adolescence confirms that the need for social belonging is a primary reason for participation. The desire to feel accepted and integrated within a peer group is a crucial aspect of positive development, and viral challenges offer a seemingly straightforward, if risky, path to achieving that integration. The Viral Internet Challenges Scale, VICHS, a tool developed to measure these motivations, provides quantitative evidence for this connection. The scale includes items that directly assess this drive, such as, I like to perform a dare or challenge with more people to feel part of a group, and, more pointedly, I perform certain dares or challenges because I don't want to feel left out in my group of friends. The strong correlation found between high scores on the VICHS and high scores on separate psychological scales for FOMO and nomophobia, the fear of being without one's mobile phone, validates the central role of these anxieties in driving participation. A teen's phone is their portal to their social world. The fear of being disconnected from it, nomophobia, and the fear of missing out on what is happening within it, FOMO, are two sides of the same coin, pushing them toward engagement at all costs. 1.3 The currency of clout, recognition, attention, and status. In the digital economy of youth culture, the ultimate currency is clout, a measure of influence, relevance, and social status. Viral challenges represent a direct and highly visible pathway to earning this currency. Participation is, at its core, a performance for an audience, an opportunity to gain social recognition and validation from peers. The immediate feedback loop of likes, comments, and shares acts as a powerful form of positive reinforcement, validating the performance and making the participant more likely to engage in similar activities in the future. This desire for recognition allows individuals to showcase their creativity, unique skills, sense of humor, or, in the case of dangerous challenges, their bravery and willingness to take risks. For some, like participants in the Ice Bucket Challenge, the attention sought was tied to supporting a commendable cause. However, for many others, the attention itself is the goal. This dynamic can create a dangerous escalatory pressure. In a crowded digital space where countless others are performing the same challenge, the desire for attention often leads participants to innovate more hazardous versions of the trend to stand out. This escalation is a key link between the psychological drive for attention and the physical risk of the challenges. Researchers observed this phenomenon clearly among participants of the Cinnamon Challenge. One participant admitted their motivation was definitely peers, and like I said, the attention. Seeing other friends posting videos and who could do the challenge longer. This quote reveals a crucial insight. The competition was not just about completing the challenge, but about enduring the associated risk for a longer period than others. This directly transforms the pursuit of attention into a contest of risk tolerance, explicitly raising the stakes and the potential for physical harm. The more outrageous the act, the greater the potential reward in the form of digital clout, creating a system that incentivizes increasingly reckless behavior. 1.4 The thrill of the game, entertainment, curiosity, and competition. While social pressures are immense, it is crucial not to overlook the simpler, more intrinsic motivations that draw young people to these challenges. For many, participation is driven by a straightforward desire for fun and entertainment. Challenges that are simple, amusing, and easy to replicate have a high likelihood of going viral because they offer an enjoyable break from the monotony of daily routines. The joy of taking part, and of watching others' attempts, creates a positive feedback loop that fuels a challenge's popularity. A participant in the Kiki Challenge, which involved dancing next to a moving car, stated simply, "It seemed like fun, and I personally like the artist who sings the song." Alongside entertainment is the powerful force of curiosity. Many young people are intrigued by the potential reactions of those who witness their performance, while others are genuinely curious to experience the physical sensations associated with the challenge themselves. They wonder if their response will mirror what they have seen in other videos. One participant in the Cinnamon Challenge cited mostly curiosity as their motivation, explaining, "Just because, seeing other people's reactions, I kind of wanted to see if I would have the same reaction." This desire to personally experience a widely shared phenomenon is a potent, often underestimated, driver. Finally, the element of competition adds a compelling layer to the appeal. Many viral challenges are explicitly or implicitly structured to encourage participants to push their limits, showcase their best efforts, or outperform others. This taps into our innate human desire to excel, to be recognized for our achievements, and to win. This competitive aspect drives more people to take part and to share their results, especially if they believe they have performed the challenge particularly well. These psychological drivers do not operate in isolation. They are deeply interconnected and mutually reinforcing, creating a powerful cycle that can transform a minor trend into a global phenomenon with astonishing speed. It begins with a challenge that is novel and entertaining. Early adopters and influencers participate, creating the initial wave of social proof. As their videos spread, the contagion effect takes hold, triggering FOMO in a wider audience who now feels pressure to join the shared experience. Their participation is motivated by the promise of social recognition in the form of likes and shares, which provides a dopamine-driven reward that reinforces the behavior. This cycle repeats and accelerates, with each new wave of participants strengthening the social proof and FOMO for those still on the sidelines, making the challenge seem like a mandatory cultural event. It is within this powerful, self-perpetuating psychological vortex that the decision to risk one's well-being for a like begins to seem not only rational, but necessary. Chapter 2. The Influenced Brain: How Social Media Rewires the Teen Mind. The psychological forces that pull adolescents toward viral challenges, the need to belong, the fear of exclusion, the craving for recognition, are potent on their own. However, their extraordinary power in the digital age can only be fully understood by examining the biological terrain on which they operate, the developing teenage brain. Adolescence is a period of profound neurological transformation, a time of unique strengths and vulnerabilities. It is this specific phase of brain development that makes young people uniquely susceptible to the social pressures and rewards offered by platforms like TikTok and Instagram. More alarmingly, a growing body of evidence from neuroscience suggests that the relationship is not one-sided. Frequent, intensive social media use is not merely exploiting the vulnerabilities of the adolescent brain. It is actively shaping its structure and function, potentially altering its developmental trajectory in ways that amplify risk-taking behavior and emotional fragility. 2.1 The Adolescent Brain: A Work in Progress. The teenage brain is not a finished product. It is a dynamic work in progress, characterized by what neuroscientists call asynchronous development. This means that different parts of the brain mature at different rates. The limbic system, which includes structures like the amygdala and is the brain's hub for emotion, reward processing, and social cognition, undergoes rapid development during early adolescence. This is the system that drives the intense emotions, the sensitivity to peer opinion, and the powerful craving for rewarding experiences that are hallmarks of the teenage years. In stark contrast, the prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive control center, matures much more slowly, continuing its development well into the mid-20s. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for rational thought, long-term planning, impulse control, and accurately assessing the future consequences of one's actions. The result of this developmental lag is a brain that is, by its very nature, imbalanced. It has a highly revved-up engine for seeking rewards, excitement, and social connection, but the braking system, the part responsible for careful deliberation and risk assessment, is not yet fully online. This biological reality makes adolescents inherently prone to taking risks, acting on impulse, and prioritizing the immediate gratification of peer approval over the potential for long-term harm. It is a window of vulnerability that the architecture of social media fits into like a key in a lock. 2.2 The Dopamine Loop: Engineering Addiction. Social media platforms are not passive environments. They are highly engineered systems designed to capture and hold our attention. Their success relies on their ability to tap into the brain's fundamental reward circuitry, a system governed by the neurotransmitter dopamine. Dopamine is often called the pleasure chemical, but its role is more nuanced. It is centrally involved in motivation, anticipation, and the reinforcement of behaviors that the brain deems worth repeating. When we anticipate or receive a reward, our brain releases a hit of dopamine, creating a feeling of satisfaction and reinforcing the behavior that led to it. Social media platforms are masters of leveraging this system to create a compulsive loop of engagement. The unpredictable nature of social rewards, a like, a positive comment, a new follower, functions much like a slot machine. The anticipation of a potential reward is enough to trigger a dopamine release, creating a craving to check the platform. Each notification, each red badge, is a promise of a potential social reward. This process conditions the brain, creating a powerful, often unconscious, habit. As described in a study by Mazza and colleagues, adolescents become conditioned to habitually check social media in anticipation of these rewards, much like an addiction. This is not a moral failing. It is a biological response to a deliberately designed system. The constant notifications, the endless scrolling, and the dopamine-driven feedback loops are engineered to be addictive, making it harder for anyone, especially teens with underdeveloped impulse control, to focus, think critically, and disengage. 2.3 The brain on social feedback. fMRI evidence. For years, concerns about social media's impact on the brain were largely theoretical. Now, thanks to advances in neuroimaging, we have concrete evidence. Studies using functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, are revealing that habitual social media use is associated with measurable structural and functional changes in the adolescent brain. A landmark 3-year longitudinal study published in JAMA Pediatrics followed a group of students from the 6th and 7th grades, analyzing their brains and social media habits over time. The findings were stark. The brains of the participants who checked social media most frequently developed differently than those who checked less often. Specifically, the habitual checkers showed increased activation in the amygdala, the brain's emotion and threat detection center, as well as in other brain circuits related to motivation and impulsivity. Researchers suggest this hyperactivation leads the brain to place a higher value on social rewards, which in turn makes it more difficult to control the impulsive behavior of checking social media. In contrast, the non-habitual checkers showed lower amygdala activation, indicating a better ability to regulate their impulses and respond more adaptively, a process known as cognitive control. These findings suggest something profound. Frequent social media use may be altering the very trajectory of adolescent brain development. Instead of learning to temper their reactions to social feedback as they mature, the brains of heavy users are being trained to become more sensitive and reactive to social cues. This heightened sensitivity can make them hypersensitive to feedback and criticism from friends, as other studies have shown. The 2023 U.S. Surgeon General's Advisory on Youth Mental Health corroborates these concerns, stating that frequent social media use can negatively impact functions essential for navigating life's challenges, including attention, impulse control, emotional learning, and mood regulation. The brain is not just being influenced, it is being rewired. This rewiring creates a vicious cycle that can fuel anxiety and further engagement. A brain that has been trained to be hypersensitive to social feedback is more likely to experience negative emotions like anxiety, depression, and low self-esteem when confronted with the inevitable social comparisons, compare and despair, and feelings of exclusion, FOMO, that are rampant on these platforms. These negative feelings create a psychological void, a need for validation. To fill that void, the teen is driven back to the platform, seeking the dopamine hit of a positive comment or a like. In this cycle, the platform becomes both the cause of the distress and the perceived solution, deepening the user's dependence and reinforcing the entire harmful loop. 2.4 The impoverished environment and other harms. Beyond the direct impact on reward circuits and social sensitivity, there are broader concerns about how the nature of digital interaction affects brain development. Some experts argue that the time spent on social media comes at the expense of richer, more complex real-world experiences that are crucial for optimal brain growth. Classic neuroscience research has shown that animals raised in enriched environments, with social interaction and physical stimuli develop more complex neural connections than those raised in impoverished environments. The argument follows that the passive, two-dimensional nature of scrolling through a screen represents a comparatively impoverished form of social stimulation compared to the multi-sensory, nuanced, and unpredictable nature of face-to-face interaction, sports, and outdoor play. By retreating into the bubble of social media, young people may not be fully exercising their brains, potentially inhibiting normal development and leaving them more vulnerable to stress and anxiety. Finally, there are direct physiological consequences. The constant exposure to blue light emitted from digital screens, especially at night, can disrupt the body's natural circadian rhythms by suppressing the release of melatonin, the sleep hormone. The link between poor sleep and negative mental health outcomes, including depression and anxiety, is well established. For a developing brain that relies on sleep for consolidation of learning and emotional regulation, this disruption is particularly damaging. The American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry has issued screen time guidelines specifically to address these concerns, highlighting the critical need to be mindful of screen time, especially in the hours before bed. The chase for likes is, in a very real sense, costing kids their sleep, and with it, a crucial pillar of their mental health. Chapter 3: The Algorithmic Amplifier, Engineering Virality. The psychological and neurological vulnerabilities of adolescents explain why they are susceptible to the lure of viral challenges. But they do not explain how these specific, often dangerous, trends reach them with such speed, precision, and seeming ubiquity. The answer lies in the invisible architecture of the digital world, the algorithms. Social media platforms are not neutral town squares where ideas rise and fall on their own merit. They are meticulously designed commercial arenas built on the principles of the attention economy, where the primary goal is not communication, but the capture and monetization of user attention. The algorithms that govern these platforms are the primary tools for achieving this goal, acting as powerful amplifiers that curate and disseminate content. While these systems are often touted as tools for safety and personalization, their fundamental design can create an environment where dangerous content is not only tolerated but actively promoted, turning a platform into an unwitting accomplice in the spread of harm. 3.1 The Attention Economy, the Business of Engagement. To understand the role of algorithms, one must first understand the business model they serve. The vast majority of social media platforms generate revenue through targeted advertising. The more time a user spends on the platform and the more they interact with content, the more data the platform can collect about their interests, behaviors, and relationships. This data is then used to sell highly specific, targeted advertising space to other companies. In this model, user attention is the core commodity. Therefore, the platform's primary objective is to maximize user engagement, which is measured through metrics like time spent on the platform, likes, comments, shares, and other interactions. Algorithms are the sophisticated artificial intelligence (AI) systems built to achieve this objective. They analyze massive volumes of user-generated content and individual user data to sort, rank, and recommend a personalized feed of content that is most likely to be deemed relevant or engaging by that specific user. Every feed is a custom-built reality, designed to keep the user scrolling, watching, and interacting for as long as possible. This system is incredibly effective at its stated goal, but it carries profound and often hidden consequences for the type of content that gets prioritized and amplified. 3.2 Algorithmic Amplification, How Engagement Trumps Safety. The central problem with this model is the phenomenon of algorithmic amplification, where the systems designed to maximize engagement inadvertently promote and spread harmful content. This occurs because the definition of engagement is often agnostic to the nature of the content. An algorithm does not understand good or bad, safe or dangerous. It understands what captures human attention. Human psychology is inherently drawn to content that is novel, emotionally charged, shocking, or sensational, a description that perfectly fits many dangerous viral challenges. The consequences of this design are not theoretical. In 2021, a former Facebook employee leaked internal company documents that provided a rare window into this process. One document revealed that Facebook's ranking algorithm gave 5 times more weight to emotional reactions, such as angry, love, or wow, than to a simple like. Critics immediately pointed out that such a system would inherently prioritize and amplify divisive, outrageous, and sensational content, because those are the types of posts that elicit the strongest emotional reactions. By optimizing for this kind of intense engagement, the platform's own architecture creates a structural bias in favor of the very content that is often the most harmful. This amplification can also create what are known as echo chambers or filter bubbles. As the algorithm learns a user's preferences, it feeds them more and more of the same type of content, reinforcing their existing beliefs and shielding them from differing viewpoints. While often discussed in the context of political polarization, this mechanism is equally relevant to risky behaviors. If a teen shows an interest in prank videos, the algorithm may begin recommending increasingly extreme or dangerous challenges, normalizing the behavior and creating a feedback loop where the user is led down a rabbit hole of escalating risk. The evidence for this is chilling. Internal Facebook documents reviewed by the Wall Street Journal in 2020 found that 64% of users who joined extremist groups on the platform did so due to Facebook's recommendation tools. This is a powerful demonstration of how recommendation algorithms can actively guide users toward harmful communities and content, a mechanism that applies just as readily to viral challenges as it does to political extremism. This process reveals that the spread of dangerous challenges is not merely a bug in the system or an unfortunate side effect that platforms have failed to contain. It is a predictable feature of an algorithmic model that equates human emotional arousal with value. The system is not broken. It is working precisely as designed, to find and promote the most engaging content, regardless of its safety. In doing so, the platform shifts from being a passive host of user content to an active participant in the chain of events leading to harm. By proactively recommending a dangerous challenge video to a vulnerable teen, the platform is, in effect, introducing that teen to the source of potential injury. This active role of recommendation is the crux of many legal arguments seeking to hold platforms accountable for the harm that occurs on their watch. 3.3 The Black Box Problem and the Limits of Moderation. Compounding the problem of algorithmic amplification is the profound lack of transparency surrounding how these systems operate. The complex algorithms used by major platforms are proprietary trade secrets, often described as a black box, because their internal workings are opaque to outside researchers, regulators, and the public. This makes it incredibly difficult to independently study and verify the extent to which they amplify harmful content. Without access to the platform's vast internal data, researchers are left to analyze the outputs of the system without fully understanding the decision-making process within. This opacity exists alongside a constant tension in content moderation. Platforms employ a combination of AI-driven moderation systems and human moderators to identify and remove content that violates their policies. They frequently publicize their efforts to ensure children's online safety by detecting and removing dangerous content, such as material related to self-harm. However, these systems have significant limitations. Automated moderation often struggles with nuance, context, and irony, leading to both the failure to remove genuinely harmful content and the mistaken removal of legitimate posts, false positives. Research has also found that these systems are often less effective at moderating content in languages other than English, leaving vast segments of the global user base more exposed to harm. This creates the central contradiction of the modern social media platform. It simultaneously uses algorithms to remove harmful content to maintain a veneer of safety and to comply with regulations, while its core engagement-driven algorithms may be working to promote the very same categories of sensational content. The platform's left hand, tasked with safety, is often working against its right hand, tasked with growth and engagement. This inherent conflict between the stated goal of safety and the business imperative of engagement lies at the heart of why dangerous challenges continue to find a vast and vulnerable audience. Chapter 4. From Pranks to Peril, A History of Escalation. The phenomenon of young people daring each other to perform risky or mischievous acts is not new. Pranks and dares are a timeless feature of youth culture, a way to test boundaries, forge social bonds, and negotiate status. However, the advent of the internet, and specifically the rise of monetized, algorithmically driven social media platforms, has fundamentally transformed the nature of this behavior. What were once localized, ephemeral acts of mischief have evolved into global, permanent, and often life-threatening performances. This evolution was not accidental. It was driven by a radical shift in audience, incentives, and the psychological stakes of participation. By tracing the history of the prank from its playful origins to its perilous present, we can understand how the digital age has created a market for escalating cruelty and turned the timeless act of risk-taking into a public blood sport. 4.1 A brief history of the prank, from April Fools to Beatles about. The tradition of playing practical jokes is centuries old. Historians trace the origins of April Fool's Day back to at least the 16th century in France, when the shift from the Julian to the Gregorian calendar left some people celebrating the new year in the spring. These individuals were ridiculed by having paper fish placed on their backs and being called poisson d'avril, April fish, symbolizing a gullible person easily caught. The tradition spread across Europe, with Scotland developing a 2-day event that included sending people on phony errands, the gout hunt, and pinning fake tails on them. For centuries, pranks were largely folk traditions, acts of playful deception contained within a community. In the 20th century, mass media began to play a role. Magazines and newspapers occasionally ran hoax articles, like Sports Illustrated's famous 1985 piece on a fictional rookie pitcher who could throw a 168 miles per hour fastball. The prank industry flourished, with companies selling novelty items like whoopee cushions and fake vomit through advertisements in the back of comic books. Television brought the prank into the living room with shows like Beatles About in the UK, which subjected unsuspecting members of the public to elaborate and sometimes cruel jokes for the entertainment of a national audience. Even in these pre-digital forms, a tension existed between harmless fun and a severe streak of sadism and cruelty. The first stirrings of online pranking emerged with early internet culture in the form of scare pranks, like the Scary Maze game, an interactive flash game shared via email that would lull a user into intense concentration before suddenly displaying a screaming, ghoulish face. These early examples were startling but still relatively contained, shared among small networks of users. 4.2 The social media revolution: amplification, permanence, and monetization. The launch of video sharing platforms like YouTube in the mid-2000s, followed by the explosion of platforms like Instagram, Vine, and TikTok, fundamentally changed the architecture of the prank. 3 key factors transformed youth mischief from a localized activity into a global industry. Global audience and amplification. A prank was no longer performed for a handful of friends in a schoolyard. It was now a performance for a potentially massive, global audience. The algorithms of these platforms were designed to identify and amplify engaging content, meaning a single shocking or humorous video could go viral and be seen by millions in a matter of hours. Permanence. Unlike a schoolyard joke that lives only in memory, an online challenge is recorded and uploaded, creating a permanent digital footprint. This footage can be endlessly replayed, shared, and remixed, detaching the act from its original context and giving it an eternal life online. Monetization. This was the most revolutionary change. Social media platforms introduced advertising revenue sharing and created the influencer economy. Suddenly, pranks and challenges were no longer just for social status, they were a viable business model. Content creators could earn significant income based on the number of views and the engagement their videos generated. This financial incentive created a powerful market force, driving creators to produce a constant stream of content designed to capture attention. This monetization of harm created a market for escalating cruelty. In a competitive digital landscape, creators are financially incentivized to push the boundaries and create increasingly extreme, dangerous, or shocking content to stand out and maximize revenue. The line between a prank and outright abuse becomes blurred when human distress is the core, monetizable feature of the content. This dynamic transformed the prank from a social interaction into a commercial product, with devastating consequences for both victims and participants. 4.3 The psychology of escalation: from humor to humiliation. The structure of social media not only incentivizes escalation but also taps into darker psychological drivers. While many pranks are intended to be humorous, the constant need for higher stakes often shifts the goal from creating laughter to inducing fear, pain, and humiliation. This escalation can be understood through the lens of everyday sadism, the concept that some individuals derive pleasure from the suffering of others. Research on the motivation behind pranking suggests it can be a context for sadistic motivation, understood as a way to restore one's own sense of self after a perceived insult by displacing aggression onto a vulnerable target. This dynamic is often about the assertion of power and control. The perpetrator, by frightening or humiliating a victim, asserts their dominance. Criminologist Tony Blockley argues that in many prank videos, which often feature male perpetrators and female victims, the act is a way to maintain a dominant position in a culture that rewards aggressive male behavior. The victim is not seen as a person but as an object for their achievement. This is closely related to the concept of punching down, a term from comedy that describes making fun of a group with less power than oneself. When parents perform pranks on very young children who lack the cognitive development, theory of mind, to understand the concept of a joke, it can cross the line from humor into a form of emotional abuse. The child does not understand it as a prank, they only understand that a trusted caregiver has hurt or confused them and is now laughing at their distress. 4.4 The hidden wounds, the long-term psychological impact on victims. The focus on the prankster and the viral video often obscures the profound and lasting harm inflicted on the victims. The psychological impact of being the target of a cruel or humiliating online prank goes far beyond momentary embarrassment. Victims can suffer from a range of long-term psychological effects, including anxiety, depression, paranoia, and a pervasive erosion of trust in their relationships. Some victims report experiencing panic attacks and sleeplessness for weeks or months after the event. In severe cases involving fear-inducing pranks, such as a fake kidnapping, the experience can lead to symptoms consistent with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. This trauma is often compounded by a form of psychological abuse known as gaslighting. When a victim expresses their hurt or anger, the perpetrator often dismisses their valid feelings with phrases like, "You need to lighten up, it was just a joke," or "You're too sensitive." This tactic invalidates the victim's experience and can make them question their own right to be upset, adding a layer of psychological manipulation to the initial harm. The victim is left feeling not only humiliated by the prank but also isolated and invalidated in their response to it. The evolution from the April fish to the Tide Pod challenge is not a simple linear progression. It is a fundamental transformation. Historical pranks were primarily about negotiating status and relationships within a known, local peer group. The risk was social embarrassment or getting caught by a familiar authority figure. Modern challenges are performative acts for an anonymous, global audience, where the reward is quantifiable digital clout. This shift from relational to performative risk-taking has dramatically raised the psychological stakes, pushing participants toward more extreme behaviors and leaving a trail of unseen psychological wounds in its wake. Chapter 5. A Global Gallery of Challenges, Case Studies in Risk. The landscape of viral social media challenges is a chaotic and rapidly shifting terrain. Trends emerge, crest in a wave of global participation, and then recede, often leaving real-world consequences in their wake. To bring order to this chaos and to fully appreciate the spectrum of behavior involved, it is essential to categorize these challenges and examine specific cases in detail. From harmless acts of creativity and charity to life-altering criminal behavior and fatal stunts, these challenges provide a stark illustration of the power of digital contagion. An analysis of these trends reveals a disturbing pattern. While positive challenges exist, the ecosystem of virality disproportionately rewards and amplifies those that involve high levels of risk, with devastating impacts that transcend cultural and national borders. 5.1 A typology of viral challenges. Not all challenges are created equal. They range from the socially beneficial to the criminally negligent. The following information provides a systematic typology of prominent internet challenges, categorizing them by their nature and assigning a risk level based on their potential for physical, psychological, or legal harm. This framework serves as a reference for understanding the diverse and often dangerous world of online dares. Charity, positive challenges. Challenge name, Ice Bucket Challenge. Description: participants dump ice water on themselves or donate to ALS research, then nominate others. Primary platforms, Facebook, YouTube. Risk level, harmless. Key consequences, case notes, raised over $100 million for the ALS Association, widely seen as a positive use of viral trends. Challenge name, #TrashTag Challenge. Description: participants clean up a littered area and post before and after photos. Primary platforms, Instagram, TikTok. Risk level, harmless. Key consequences, case notes, promoted environmental stewardship and community service, praised as a constructive trend. Food and drink challenges. Challenge name, Cinnamon Challenge. Description: attempting to swallow a spoonful of dry cinnamon without water. Primary platforms, YouTube. Risk level, high. Key consequences, case notes, poses a significant risk of choking, vomiting, and inhaling the powder, which can lead to throat irritation, breathing difficulties, and aspiration pneumonia or a collapsed lung. Challenge name, One Chip Challenge. Description: eating a single, extremely spicy tortilla chip and waiting as long as possible before seeking relief. Primary platforms, TikTok. Risk level, high, fatal. Key consequences, case notes, can cause severe stomach pain and esophageal damage. A 14-year-old boy died on the same day he attempted the challenge, leading the manufacturer to pull the product from shelves. Challenge name: NyQuil Chicken. Description: cooking chicken and NyQuil cold medicine. Primary platforms: TikTok. Risk level: high. Key consequences: case notes. Boiling the medicine concentrates its active ingredients, and inhaling the vapors or ingesting the chicken can lead to a dangerous overdose, prompting a warning from the US FDA. Challenge name: Tide Pod Challenge. Description: intentionally ingesting laundry detergent pods. Primary platforms: YouTube, TikTok. Risk level: high. Key consequences: case notes. The pods contain toxic chemicals that are poisonous if ingested, leading to dozens of hospitalizations for chemical burns to the mouth, throat, and airways. Human body stunts. Challenge name: Fire Challenge. Description: applying flammable liquid to one's body and setting it on fire. Primary platforms: YouTube, TikTok. Risk level: high, fatal. Key consequences: case notes. Has resulted in numerous cases of severe, life-threatening burns and permanent scarring. Challenge name: Benadryl Challenge. Description: taking excessive doses of the antihistamine Benadryl to induce hallucinations. Primary platforms: TikTok. Risk level: high, fatal. Key consequences: case notes. Overdosing on diphenhydramine can cause seizures, severe heart problems, coma, and death. At least one teen fatality has been reported. Challenge name: Salt and Ice Challenge. Description: placing salt and ice on the skin, causing a chemical reaction that creates a painful, burn-like injury. Primary platforms: YouTube. Risk level: high. Key consequences: case notes. The combination can rapidly lower the skin's temperature, causing second and third degree burns similar to frostbite. Physical stunts. Challenge name: Blackout Choking Challenge. Description: intentionally choking oneself or another person to the point of passing out to experience a brief high. Primary platforms: TikTok. Risk level: fatal. Key consequences: case notes. One of the deadliest challenges, linked to numerous deaths of children and teens worldwide due to asphyxiation and brain damage. Lawsuits have been filed against platforms for its spread. Challenge name: Skullbreaker Challenge. Description: two people trick a third person into jumping, then kick their legs out from under them, causing them to fall backward and hit their head. Primary platforms: TikTok. Risk level: high. Key consequences: case notes. Has led to severe head injuries, concussions, spinal injuries, and paralysis. Challenge name: Milk Crate Challenge. Description: stacking plastic milk crates into a precarious pyramid and attempting to climb it. Primary platforms: TikTok. Risk level: high. Key consequences: case notes. The unstable structure almost inevitably leads to falls, resulting in orthopedic injuries such as fractured wrists, dislocated shoulders, and spinal cord damage. Crime, vandalism challenges. Challenge name: Devious Lick Challenge. Description: stealing or vandalizing school property, particularly in bathrooms, and posting videos of the lick heist. Primary platforms: TikTok. Risk level: high, legal. Key consequences: case notes. Led to widespread property damage in schools across the U.S., resulting in student arrests, suspensions, and criminal charges for theft and vandalism. Challenge name: Kia Challenge. Description: exploiting a security flaw in certain Kia and Hyundai models to steal them using a USB cable. Primary platforms: TikTok. Risk level: high, legal. Key consequences: case notes. Caused a nationwide spike in car thefts and has been linked to at least 8 deaths from related vehicle crashes. Challenge name: Door Kicking Challenge. Description: kicking a homeowner's front door loudly and running away, often at night. Primary platforms: TikTok. Risk level: high, legal, physical. Key consequences: case notes. Has terrified families who mistake it for a break-in attempt. Police have warned this could provoke a dangerous or defensive response from a homeowner, potentially leading to violence. Psychologically harmful challenges. Challenge name: Blue Whale Challenge. Description: a purported 50-day challenge involving escalating tasks of self-harm, culminating in suicide. Primary platforms: VK, WhatsApp. Risk level: fatal. Key consequences: case notes. While its existence as a centrally organized game is debated, it has been linked through media reports and some arrests to suicides and self-harm incidents globally. It functions as a dangerous psychological contagion and moral panic. 5.2 Global Case Study Deep Dives. While the table provides a broad overview, the global nature of this phenomenon is best understood by tracing the trajectory of specific challenges across different continents and cultures. These case studies reveal a consistent pattern. A dangerous trend emerges in one corner of the internet, is amplified by platform algorithms, and quickly metastasizes into a global crisis, prompting varied and often inadequate local responses. Case Study 1. The Blackout Challenge and the European Response. The Blackout Challenge, also known as the choking game or scarf challenge, is one of the oldest and deadliest online dares. The goal is to induce temporary hypoxia for a brief feeling of euphoria, but it frequently results in brain damage, injury from falling, or death by accidental asphyxiation. In recent years, this challenge has seen a resurgence on TikTok, with tragic consequences across Europe. In the United Kingdom, the deaths of several children, including 12-year-old Archie Battersby and 12-year-old Sebastian from West Yorkshire, have been linked to the challenge. These incidents have spurred a powerful response from parents, who have begun to take legal action directly against the platforms. The families of 4 British teenagers who died in 2022 filed a lawsuit against TikTok, alleging that the platform's algorithm actively promoted the harmful content to their children. This legal strategy reflects a growing sentiment that platforms bear responsibility for the content they amplify. The tragedies have also fueled a broader political movement across Europe for stricter regulation of social media for minors. Countries like France have already passed legislation requiring parental consent for users under 15. Denmark, set to take over the EU Council presidency, has announced its intention to push for an EU-wide ban on social media for children under 15, citing platforms' failure to remove illegal content and their reliance on addictive features that prioritize profit over well-being. While a consensus for an outright ban has not yet been reached, the conversation in Europe has clearly shifted towards systemic, legislative solutions, moving beyond calls for individual parental responsibility. Case Study 2. Criminal Challenges and Confrontation in the U.S. In the United States, a series of viral challenges have centered not on self-harm but on criminal acts, testing the boundary between youthful mischief and felonious behavior. The Devious Lick Challenge of 2021 saw students across the country causing thousands of dollars in damage by stealing and vandalizing school property, from soap dispensers to fire alarms, and posting their licks on TikTok. The trend resulted in a wave of arrests and school disciplinary actions, forcing platforms like TikTok to ban the associated hashtags. More recently, the Door Kicking Challenge has involved teens kicking homeowners' front doors, often at night, and fleeing. Police in multiple states have issued warnings that this prank is not harmless. It terrifies families, who often mistake the loud bang for a violent home invasion attempt. In a country with high rates of gun ownership and stand your ground laws, authorities have warned that the challenge could easily provoke a defensive and potentially lethal response from a frightened homeowner. These challenges highlight how online trends can spill into the real world, creating direct physical and legal risks for participants and innocent bystanders alike. Case Study 3. The Blue Whale Challenge, Myth, Moral Panic, and Real Harm. Perhaps no challenge illustrates the complex interplay of digital contagion, media hype, and psychological vulnerability better than the Blue Whale Challenge. Originating in Russia around 2015 on the social media site VK, the challenge was purported to be an organized game where a curator assigns a participant 50 daily tasks over 50 days. The tasks allegedly escalated from innocuous activities to acts of self-harm, culminating in a command to die by suicide on the final day. The story spread like wildfire through global media, creating a massive moral panic. Reports linked suicides and self-harm incidents to the game in countries from India and Egypt to Brazil and the United States. Subsequent investigations have revealed a more complex reality. While there have been arrests of individuals who acted as curators and incited teens to self-harm, the idea of a single, coordinated global game is largely considered a myth. Many of the so-called curators were found to be children and teenagers themselves, drawn into the narrative by the media hysteria. The Blue Whale Challenge is less a coherent game and more a powerful and dangerous psychological contagion, a collection of symbols, ideas, and narratives about self-harm that vulnerable individuals latch onto to explain their own distress. It demonstrates how a harmful idea, amplified by both social and traditional media, can take on a life of its own and produce real-world victims, even if its initial premise is a hoax. Case Study 4. Regulatory Responses in Asia. In Asia, the response to dangerous challenges has been characterized by a combination of public awareness campaigns and a growing push for stricter government regulation. In Singapore, after a clip of students performing a choking game went viral, the Ministry of Education issued a formal advisory to all parents via a government app. The advisory warned about the dangers of the blackout challenge and the skullbreaker challenge, and urged parents to play an active role in guiding their children, reflecting a government-led approach to public education. Elsewhere in the region, governments are moving toward more forceful regulatory measures. Vietnam now requires social media users to verify their accounts with a national ID, and Malaysia requires platforms to obtain operating licenses. Australia has gone even further, passing legislation to ban social media use for children under 16. These measures reflect a regional trend that is shifting from regulating online content to regulating online access. This approach, while intended to protect children, also raises significant concerns about exclusion and whether it will simply push young users to less regulated corners of the internet. The varied responses across the continent, from public warnings in Singapore to outright bans in Australia, highlight the global struggle to find an effective and balanced approach to mitigating the harms of the digital world. These case studies reveal a critical disconnect. While the challenges themselves are a globalized, cross-cultural phenomenon, spreading effortlessly across borders via transnational platforms, the responses remain highly localized and fragmented. A challenge that causes a death in the UK may lead to a lawsuit, while the same challenge in Singapore prompts a government circular. This mismatch between the global nature of the problem and the national nature of the solutions creates significant regulatory gaps, leaving children around the world inconsistently protected from the perils of the chase for clout. Chapter 6. The Fallout: Legal, Ethical, and Societal Reckoning. The proliferation of dangerous social media challenges has left a wake of devastation, prompting a societal reckoning that is now playing out in courtrooms, legislative chambers, and academic debates. As the human cost becomes undeniable, parents, educators, and policymakers are moving beyond questions of individual responsibility to scrutinize the systems that enable and amplify these trends. This has ignited a complex and evolving legal battle over platform liability, a re-examination of the criminal culpability of young participants, and a profound ethical debate about the very nature of digital design and data collection. Society is now grappling with a fundamental question: when a child is harmed by a viral trend, who is to blame, and who should be held accountable? 6.1 The question of liability: suing the platforms. In recent years, a significant legal front has opened up, with a wave of lawsuits filed by parents and public school districts against major social media companies, including Meta, Facebook and Instagram, Google, YouTube, ByteDance, TikTok, and Snap Inc. Snapchat. These lawsuits represent a foundational shift in how social media harm is being framed. No longer viewed as isolated incidents of poor judgment, the harms are being presented as the direct result of a defective and dangerous product. The legal arguments put forth by parents whose children have suffered from addiction, eating disorders, self-harm, or have died by suicide after engaging with platform content are pointed. They allege that these companies have intentionally and deliberately designed their social media apps without regard for the safety of children. The core of their claim is that platforms have knowingly created addictive products that exploit the neurological vulnerabilities of young users to maximize profit, all while being aware of the potential for severe mental and physical harm. Even more striking is the entry of public institutions into the legal fray. Over 200 school districts across the United States have filed their own lawsuits, often on the grounds of public nuisance. Their argument is not just about abstract harm but about quantifiable, financial damages. They allege that the youth mental health crisis, fueled by addictive social media use, has placed an unsustainable burden on their resources. Schools are forced to hire more mental health counselors, spend additional hours reworking lesson plans to accommodate students with diminished attention spans, and struggle to maintain focus in the classroom. Furthermore, challenges like the devious lick have resulted in thousands of dollars of property damage that schools must pay to repair. By filing these lawsuits, school districts are formally arguing that social media platforms are externalizing the costs of their engagement-driven business model onto the public sector. This legal strategy reframes the entire debate, moving it from a matter of personal responsibility to a public health crisis caused by a dangerously designed product, echoing the legal tactics previously used against the tobacco and opioid industries. 6.2 The Section 230 Shield, a legal impasse? At the heart of the legal battle against social media platforms lies a single, powerful piece of legislation, Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act of 1996. This law has been the bedrock of the modern Internet, stating that no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. In essence, it has shielded platforms from being held liable for the content that their users post. A newspaper can be sued for libel printed in its pages, but under Section 230, a social media platform has historically not been liable for a defamatory post made by a user. However, the current lawsuits are attempting to pierce this shield by focusing on the platform's own actions, specifically the role of their recommendation algorithms. The argument is that when a platform uses its algorithm to proactively recommend harmful content to a user, it is no longer acting as a neutral, passive host for third-party information. Instead, it is becoming an active curator and promoter of that content, and should therefore be held liable for the consequences. This distinction is critical. If a user has to actively search for a dangerous challenge, the platform can more easily claim it is merely a host. But if the platform's own algorithm pushes the challenge into a teen's feed, as was alleged in the lawsuits concerning the blackout challenge, the platform's role becomes much more direct. This critical legal question has reached the U.S. Supreme Court in cases like Gonzalez versus Google and Twitter versus Tomney, which considered whether platforms could be liable for recommending terrorist content. However, in 2023, the court issued narrow rulings on other grounds and declined to weigh in on the core Section 230 issue, leaving the legal landscape in a state of uncertainty. For now, lower courts have generally held that recommendation algorithms are protected under Section 230, but the debate is far from over. The future of platform liability may ultimately be decided not in the courts, but by Congress, which faces growing pressure to reform the 28-year-old law to reflect the realities of the modern, algorithm-driven Internet. 6.3 Criminal liability, when a challenge becomes a crime. While platforms face civil liability, the young participants themselves can face criminal liability when a challenge crosses the line into illegal activity. Challenges that involve theft, vandalism, or assault have led directly to legal consequences for the teens involved. For example, the Devious Lick challenge resulted in numerous students facing disciplinary action from schools, court orders for restitution to pay for damages, and even criminal charges for theft and vandalism. Similarly, pranks that cause physical harm can lead to assault charges. In the most extreme cases, the legal system has had to grapple with challenges that lead to death. The Blue Whale Challenge saw its alleged creator in Russia, Philip Badaykin, convicted of inciting at least 2 teenage girls to die by suicide and sentenced to prison. The highly publicized Slender Man case in Wisconsin, which was inspired by an online horror legend and challenge, saw 2 12-year-old girls charged with attempted homicide after stabbing their friend. These cases highlight the crucial role of forensic mental health in the legal process. The Slender Man trial hinged on extensive testimony from forensic psychiatrists and psychologists. Ultimately, both girls were found guilty but not guilty due to mental disease defect, with one being diagnosed with schizophrenia, leading to sentences in psychiatric facilities rather than prison. These cases demonstrate that while the digital world may feel like a game, the consequences can be adjudicated with the full weight of the criminal justice system. 6.4 The ethics of data and design. Beyond the legal battles, the phenomenon of dangerous challenges forces a deeper ethical reckoning with the foundational principles of the digital world, particularly concerning minors. 3 core ethical issues stand out. Privacy and informed consent. Social media platforms operate by collecting vast quantities of personal data about their users, their likes, clicks, location, social connections, and more. This data is the fuel for the targeted advertising model. This raises profound ethical questions about privacy and consent, especially for children. Do young users, or even their parents, truly understand the extent of the data being collected and how it is being used to create detailed psychological profiles for commercial purposes? Given the complexity of terms of service agreements, which can be thousands of words long, the concept of informed consent becomes almost meaningless. The ethics of persuasive design. Is it ethical to design a product that is intentionally addictive? Social media platforms are built using principles of persuasive technology, leveraging psychological vulnerabilities like the need for social validation and intermittent rewards to create compulsive usage loops. When these techniques are applied to children, whose brains are still developing the capacity for impulse control, the ethical questions become even more acute. Critics argue that this constitutes a form of exploitation, prioritizing profit over the well-being of a vulnerable population. The context collapse of online information. Social media collapses the boundaries between different social contexts. Information shared with a small group of friends can easily be viewed by a much wider, unintended audience, including parents, teachers, college admissions officers, or future employers. This context collapse creates ethical dilemmas. Is it fair to judge a person's professional character based on a joke shared on their private profile? Should a school discipline a student for off-campus online behavior? These questions challenge traditional notions of public versus private life and force a re-evaluation of how we assess character and behavior in a world where every action can be recorded and broadcast. The fallout from the age of viral challenges is a complex tapestry of legal precedent, criminal justice, and ethical inquiry. It marks a crucial turning point where society is being forced to move beyond a simplistic view of the internet as a neutral tool and to confront the profound consequences of the digital environment we have built. An environment that, for too many young people, has proven to be a dangerous and unforgiving place. Chapter 7. The Watchers, Platform Policies and Parental Responses. In the face of the escalating crisis of dangerous online challenges, two primary lines of defense have emerged: the official policies and moderation systems of the social media platforms themselves, and the vigilant efforts of parents and caregivers. Platforms have developed extensive community guidelines that explicitly prohibit harmful content, while parents are urged to engage in a delicate balance of communication, monitoring, and boundary setting. However, a critical examination of both approaches reveals significant limitations and a persistent gap between stated intentions and real-world effectiveness. The platform's rules often serve more as a legal shield than a protective barrier, while parents are left to navigate a complex and ever-changing digital landscape with few reliable tools, often feeling one step behind. 7.1 Reading the Fine Print, a comparative analysis of platform policies. All major social media platforms have published community standards or guidelines that, on paper, forbid the promotion of dangerous activities. These policies are the company's public-facing commitment to safety. However, the specifics of what is prohibited and how these rules are enforced and vary significantly. A comparative analysis reveals a complex patchwork of rules across the digital ecosystem. The following information summarizes the key policies of major platforms regarding dangerous content, providing a side-by-side view that highlights both common ground and important distinctions. This consolidation of information allows for a clearer assessment of the industry's stated approach to protecting users. TikTok. Key prohibitions. Prohibits the display or promotion of dangerous activities and challenges that may lead to significant physical harm. This includes dares, stunts, inappropriate use of dangerous tools, and ingesting harmful substances. Also bans behavior that is easily copied and may lead to harm. Stated enforcement. Removal of violating content. Bans on accounts for severe or repeated violations. A strike system may be used. Discourages sharing of warnings about harmful challenges, as it can amplify them. Reporting mechanism. In-app reporting tools for videos, comments, accounts, and direct messages. Reports are confidential. YouTube. Key prohibitions. Prohibits content encouraging dangerous or illegal activities that risk serious physical harm or death. Has highly specific categories, including extremely dangerous challenges, e.g., asphyxiation, misuse of weapons, ingesting harmful substances, and dangerous or threatening pranks, e.g., those inflicting physical harm or causing serious emotional distress to minors. Stated enforcement. Removal of violating content and an email notification to the creator. A warning for a first offense, followed by a strike system. 3 strikes in 90 days can lead to channel termination. May age-restrict content with sufficient educational or documentary context. Reporting mechanism. In-app reporting feature for videos and comments. Users can report violations of community guidelines. Instagram, Meta. Key prohibitions. Community standards prohibit content that glorifies or encourages self-injury, including eating disorders. Also bans support or praise of terrorism, organized crime, and hate groups. Graphic violence is not allowed. The Dangerous Organizations and Individuals policy removes content that glorifies, supports, or represents entities tied to real-world violence. Stated enforcement. Removal of violating posts or entire accounts. May work with law enforcement when there is a risk of physical harm or threat to public safety. A tiered system for dangerous organizations dictates the level of content enforcement. Reporting mechanism. Built-in reporting option for posts, comments, stories, messages, and profiles. Users are asked to select a specific violation type. Snapchat. Key prohibitions. Community guidelines prohibit content that encourages or threatens violent or dangerous behavior. This includes high-risk challenges, reckless driving, or other behavior posing a risk to public safety. Also has a zero-tolerance policy for severe harms like child sexual exploitation or threats of physical harm. Stated enforcement. A strike system is applied for violations. Accounts with too many strikes are disabled. For severe offenses, the account is immediately disabled, the device may be blocked, and the report may be escalated to law enforcement. Reporting mechanism. In-app reporting tools for snaps, stories, and chats. Reports are confidential and reviewed by a 24/7 safety team. Online reporting tools are also available for non-users. 7.2 The enforcement gap. Policy versus reality. Despite these detailed policies, a significant enforcement gap persists. Dangerous challenges continue to go viral, and harmful content remains readily accessible. This gap exists for several reasons. First, the sheer volume of content uploaded every second makes comprehensive moderation, whether by AI or humans, a monumental task. Automated systems struggle with context and can be easily tricked by algo-speak, code words used to evade detection, while human moderators face immense psychological strain and cannot review everything. Second, and more fundamentally, the enforcement of safety policies is often in direct conflict with the platform's core business model. As discussed in Chapter 3, engagement-driven algorithms can amplify sensational and shocking content because it captures attention. This means a platform's safety team may be working to remove a dangerous challenge video while its recommendation algorithm is simultaneously promoting it to millions of users. This inherent contradiction suggests that platform policies may function more as a form of legal and public relations shielding than as an effective protective barrier. By having extensive rules in place, platforms can shift blame to users who violate them and to the inevitable failures of moderation, rather than addressing the systemic issues within their own algorithmic design that contribute to the problem's spread. 7.3 The Parental Playbook. Communication, Monitoring, and Boundaries. Given the limitations of platform self-regulation, a heavy burden falls on parents and caregivers. The consensus among child psychologists and safety experts is that a proactive, communicative approach is essential. The parental playbook consists of 3 key strategies. Open communication. This is the most critical component. Experts advise parents to have regular, non-judgmental conversations with their teens about their online lives. Instead of lecturing, parents should ask open-ended questions. What do you know about these challenges? What do you think about them? Have your friends ever talked about doing one? This approach encourages teens to develop their own critical thinking skills and builds the trust necessary for them to come to a parent if they or a friend are in trouble. Monitoring and boundaries. While respecting privacy is important, monitoring is also a key part of the parental role. This can involve using parental control tools, periodically reviewing a child's social media activity, and establishing clear, firm boundaries. Widely recommended rules include setting daily screen time limits, e.g., no more than 2 hours of recreational screen time, keeping devices out of the bedroom at night to protect sleep, and creating screen-free times, such as during family meals. Role modeling. Children learn digital habits from their parents. Therefore, it is crucial for parents to model the behavior they wish to see, such as putting their own phones away during conversations and balancing their online and offline lives. 7.4 Parenting Styles and Digital Resilience. Research indicates that the style of parenting can significantly impact the effectiveness of these strategies. A study by Dr. Rachel Young at the University of Iowa draws a sharp contrast between two approaches. A controlling parenting style, characterized by exerting parental will without discussion and using punishment without explanation, tends to be less effective. It can lead to adolescents hiding their online activities for fear of negative consequences, which shuts down the vital channel of communication. An autonomy-supportive parenting style, in contrast, is associated with more positive online experiences. This approach is not permissive, it still involves setting firm limits and boundaries. However, it does so transparently and collaboratively. It acknowledges the adolescent's perspective, explains the reasons behind rules, and uses monitoring or consequences as an opportunity to start a conversation rather than to simply exert authority. Adolescents raised with an autonomy-supportive style report feeling more comfortable discussing their online experiences with their parents and, crucially, report fewer risky online experiences. This approach fosters the internal resources, like self-esteem and relational skills, that are essential for building digital resilience. It equips teens with the ability to navigate the complex social world online, rather than simply trying to wall it off. Ultimately, while platform policies provide a flawed and inconsistent safety net, the most effective protection for young people comes from strong, trusting, and communicative relationships with the adults in their lives. Chapter 8. Forging a Safer Path Forward, Interventions and Solutions. Analyzing the complex interplay of adolescent psychology, brain development, and algorithmic amplification can feel overwhelming, painting a grim picture of a crisis with no clear solution. However, despair is not a strategy. A growing body of research and practice points toward a multi-layered approach to intervention, one that targets individuals, families, schools, and the platforms themselves. The path forward requires moving beyond reactive measures and fragmented responsibility. It demands a proactive, evidence-based strategy focused on building resilience in young people, empowering parents and educators, and fundamentally redesigning our digital spaces to prioritize well-being over engagement. While there is no single silver bullet, a combination of clinical, educational, and systemic interventions offers a viable roadmap for mitigating the harms of dangerous online challenges. 8.1 A multi-layered approach to intervention. The most effective response to a multifaceted problem is a multi-layered one. No single intervention can address all aspects of the viral challenge phenomenon. The following information summarizes the most promising evidence-based interventions discussed in the research, outlining their target audience, core principles, and evidence of efficacy. This framework provides a clear overview of the tools available to forge a safer path forward. Cognitive Behavioral Therapy, CBT. Target audience, adolescents with digital addiction or related mental health issues. Core principles. Identifies and reframes negative thought patterns, develops coping skills for managing impulses and negative emotions, and modifies compulsive behaviors. Evidence of efficacy. Scoping reviews identify CBT as the most common and effective evidence-based psychotherapy for digital addiction, showing significant improvement in anxiety, depression, and time spent online. Family-based interventions. Target audience, families of at-risk adolescents. Core principles. Improves family dynamics, communication, and relationships. Addresses underlying issues that may drive teens to seek validation online. Includes autonomy-supportive parenting techniques. Evidence of efficacy. Studies show family therapy can be more effective than individual CBT for improving comorbid conditions in family relationships. Autonomy-supportive parenting is linked to fewer risky online behaviors. Digital and media literacy programs. Target audience, students, K-12, parents, educators. Core principles. Equips users with critical thinking skills to evaluate online content, recognize risks, e.g., misinformation, scams, understand privacy settings, and build digital resilience. Evidence of efficacy. Research shows that higher digital literacy significantly enhances the use of preventive measures, e.g., privacy controls, and moderately reduces cybercrime victimization. It is a key tool for fostering safer online environments. Peer-led social media interventions. Target audience, at-risk adolescents and emerging adults. Core principles. Uses trained peers as e-coaches within private social media groups to deliver interventions based on motivational interviewing, MI, and CBT. Leverages peer influence for positive change. Evidence of efficacy. RCT protocols show this is a promising model for delivering early interventions with broad reach for issues like risky drinking, with potential for adaptation to other risky behaviors. It addresses privacy and uses the platform itself as the intervention medium. Restorative justice practices. Target audience: perpetrators and victims of online harm, e.g., cyberbullying, abusive pranks. Core principles. Moves beyond punishment to focus on accountability, repairing harm, and reconciliation. Involves dialogue between the person who caused harm and the person who was harmed. Evidence of efficacy. While primarily used in criminal justice, its principles offer a potential framework for addressing online harm in a way that promotes empathy and healing, rather than just deplatforming an offender. 8.2 Clinical and therapeutic interventions. For adolescents already struggling with compulsive social media use or the mental health consequences of online engagement, clinical interventions are crucial. The most well-supported approach is cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. A comprehensive scoping review found that CBT and CBT-based programs are the most common and effective psychotherapies for digital addiction in children and adolescents. CBT works by helping individuals understand the relationship between their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. A therapist can help a teen identify the negative thought patterns that drive their compulsive checking, e.g., if I don't check my phone, my friends will forget about me, challenge those thoughts, and develop healthier coping mechanisms for dealing with negative emotions like boredom, loneliness, or anxiety. Interventions that involve the family unit have also shown significant promise. Family therapy can be highly effective because it addresses the relational context in which a teen's online behavior occurs. By improving family communication and strengthening parent-child bonds, these programs can reduce an adolescent's need to seek validation and belonging exclusively from online peers. This aligns with research showing that an autonomy-supportive parenting style, which emphasizes open communication and collaboration, is a protective factor against risky online behavior. 8.3 The power of education, digital and media literacy. While therapy is a vital reactive measure, digital and media literacy education is the most powerful proactive one. Instead of simply telling kids what not to do, these programs aim to equip them with the critical thinking skills needed to navigate the digital world safely and responsibly on their own. A comprehensive media literacy curriculum helps students learn to critically evaluate content, question the source and intent of information they see online, recognize risks, identify potential dangers like phishing scams, fake profiles, misinformation, and the persuasive design of algorithms, manage their digital footprint, understand the importance of privacy settings and the permanence of online content. Research confirms the effectiveness of this approach. A 2025 study found that higher levels of digital literacy were significantly associated with better use of preventive measures, like strong privacy controls, and a moderate reduction in cybercrime victimization. The ultimate goal of this education is not to instill fear, but to build digital resilience, the capacity to anticipate, withstand, and recover from online risks. This is a core life skill for 21st century citizenship. 8.4 Individual and family strategies for a healthier digital life. Beyond formal programs, there are practical strategies that individuals and families can implement to foster a healthier relationship with technology. For teens, this involves taking active control of their digital consumption. This includes being mindful of their social media habits by asking how platforms make them feel, setting personal limits on time spent scrolling, and consciously choosing to unfollow accounts that stir up negative emotions like envy or inadequacy. It also means shifting from passive consumption to active, positive use, such as connecting with people who share similar interests and provide a genuine sense of belonging. For families, creating intentional space away from screens is key. This can be achieved through digital detoxes or regular screen-free time, such as banning phones from the dinner table or during family activities. Encouraging and participating in offline hobbies and real-world relationships helps fulfill the basic human need for connection in a way that social media cannot. One Reddit user, describing a 7-day social media-free challenge, found that small, self-assigned, offline challenges, like going for a walk without their phone, were critical in breaking the compulsive habit and led to a massive boost in productivity and creativity. 8.5 Restorative justice, healing online harm. Finally, for cases where harm has already occurred, such as in instances of severe cyberbullying or humiliating pranks, a more innovative approach may be needed. Traditional responses, like banning an offender's account, do little to address the harm felt by the victim or to teach the offender about the impact of their actions. The principles of restorative justice offer a compelling alternative. This philosophy, used primarily in the criminal justice system, focuses on repairing harm rather than simply punishing an offense. It emphasizes accountability, forgiveness, and making amends through a facilitated dialogue between the person who caused harm, the person who was harmed, and affected community members. Applying this framework to online harm could be transformative. Instead of a simple account suspension, a restorative process might involve a mediated conversation where the prankster has to listen directly to the victim describe the fear, humiliation, and anxiety they caused. The goal would be for the offender to understand the real-world impact of their joke, and to work with the victim to find a way to repair the harm, whether through a public apology, community service, or another agreed-upon action. This approach moves beyond punishment toward genuine learning, empathy, and healing for everyone involved. Ultimately, the most effective interventions are those that are proactive and skill-based, rather than purely reactive and restrictive. While rules and limits are necessary, the long-term solution lies in building internal skills and resilience. An adolescent equipped with critical thinking skills from digital literacy programs, emotional regulation techniques from CBT, and strong relational support from an autonomy-supportive family is better prepared to navigate any new online trend or platform they encounter. The goal is not to build a higher wall around the digital world, but to give young people the tools they need to climb safely. Conclusion: beyond the algorithm. The journey through the world of viral challenges reveals a stark and unsettling truth. The phenomenon of young people risking their lives for likes is not an aberration. It is not the result of a single moral failing or a sudden generational recklessness. Rather, it is the logical, predictable, and systemic outcome of a digital architecture that has been built on a foundation of misaligned incentives. It is the story of what happens when the relentless, algorithmically driven pursuit of commercial engagement collides with the well-documented psychological and neurological vulnerabilities of adolescence. The tragic consequences, the injuries, the psychological scars, the lost lives, are not bugs in the system. They are features of a model that has prioritized profit over the well-being of its youngest users. This investigation has deconstructed the perfect storm that creates a clout chaser. We have seen how the timeless psychological needs for social proof, belonging, and recognition are amplified into powerful, irresistible forces within the digital arena. We have examined the neurobiological evidence showing that the adolescent brain, with its underdeveloped capacity for impulse control and its heightened sensitivity to reward, is uniquely susceptible to the addictive design of social media. Crucially, fMRI studies suggest this is not a passive exploitation. The platforms are actively rewiring the developmental trajectory of the teenage brain, making it even more reactive to the very social feedback loops that cause distress. We have traced the historical evolution of the prank, from a localized social ritual to a monetized global industry, where the need to go viral creates a market for escalating cruelty and harm. We have demystified the algorithms, revealing them not as neutral arbiters of content but as powerful engines of amplification, structurally biased to promote sensational and emotionally charged material because it is, by definition, engaging. And we have surveyed the fallout, the global gallery of dangerous challenges, the fragmented and often inadequate regulatory responses, and the burgeoning legal battles that seek to reframe social media harm as a public health crisis and hold platforms accountable for the products they have designed. To confront a problem of this magnitude requires an acknowledgement of shared responsibility. The burden cannot fall solely on parents to be ever more vigilant digital police, a task that is nearly impossible in the face of platforms designed by armies of engineers to be irresistible. It cannot fall solely on teens to just say no when their brains are biologically primed to say yes to social inclusion. It cannot fall solely on platforms to self-regulate when their core business model is in direct conflict with the principles of user well-being. And it cannot fall solely on governments to legislate when technology evolves faster than policy can be written. The only viable path forward is a concerted, multi-stakeholder effort. This leads to a final, urgent call to action, one that moves beyond reactive moderation and toward a fundamental redesign of the digital environments our children inhabit. For platforms, the era of prioritizing engagement above all else must end. A new paradigm of safety by design is required, where the neurological and developmental needs of young users are considered core principles of product architecture, not afterthoughts to be addressed by a trust and safety team. This means re-evaluating engagement-based ranking, building in circuit breakers to slow the spread of harmful viral content, and making user well-being a key performance indicator for success. For policymakers, the legal frameworks governing the Internet, particularly foundational laws like Section 230, must be re-examined to reflect the reality of algorithmically driven platforms. New legislation is needed that mandates far greater transparency and accountability for recommendation systems. If an algorithm is a core part of the product, its impact must be subject to independent audit and regulatory oversight, just like any other product that poses a potential risk to public health. For educators and parents, we must recognize that digital literacy and emotional resilience are no longer elective subjects. They are essential 21st century life skills. Schools must integrate comprehensive, evidence-based media literacy into their core curricula. Parents, guided by the principles of autonomy-supportive communication, must see their role not as gatekeepers, but as coaches, helping their children develop the internal skills to navigate a complex world with wisdom and self-respect. Ultimately, this is a human story. Behind every metric, every like, share, and view count, is a young person attempting to navigate one of the most complex and psychologically demanding social environments ever constructed. The goal is not to demonize technology or to retreat from the digital world, but to reclaim it. We have the knowledge and the tools to build a digital ecosystem that nurtures growth instead of rewarding risk, that fosters genuine connection instead of fueling anxious comparison, and that protects its most vulnerable users instead of profiting from their exploitation. The price of a like has become far too high. It is time to demand something better.